Okay, it says this hangout on air is live. I don't exactly know who has joined. I'm looking around for whether it says, who is actually watching or not. It says 0 viewers on my screen.
I'm looking. It says the moderator has control, so I don't think I can.
Oh, well. Okay. Well, we'll hang out for a little bit here and to see if you have any viewers. If not, then it's just going to be me. That's totally
fine. We can just talk, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a hangout. We're hanging out. I'm going to keep my Twitter open to monitor back channel.
I don't think I'm capable of doing that kind of multitasking.
We're going to find out if I am.
Okay.
So, okay. And if I'm not...
We'll find that out, too.
Yeah.
It's okay. Oh, I have in the bottom, somebody... Is that Matt Jones is watching us?
Yes, I see one viewer.
Matt Jones' shadowed head down there.
Oh, yes, now I see it. Hi, Matt. Okay, I have a message from my student Kent who says he's in here as well. Now we have 3 viewers. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and begin. TJ and I were just saying this isn't really like a conference talk or a class or something, but we're just unaccountably nervous for some reason. I'm not really sure what this is all about. So welcome to everybody who is viewing. I see we lost a viewer just now. That's awesome. So we'll pick up more viewers as we go here. So just let me introduce myself. My name is Robert Talbert. I'm at Grand Valley State University in Michigan. I'm going to do one thing over here, which is, wait, not that. Okay, picking up a few more people. I'm going to add some ID here. There we go. Now I've got my credentials there on the screen. So, hi, my name's Robert. I'm at Grand Valley State University. TJ, you want to introduce yourself?
I will. I lost my video feed somewhere. I'm confused. Oh, here, it's coming back. So, my name is TJ Hitchman. I'm an associate professor at the University of Northern Iowa, which is inexplicably in Iowa.
And is it in northern Iowa, actually?
Sort of. I mean, Iowa's a big rectangle. Where does north start?
I was just about to ask that. Is it like exactly? Is there like an exact midpoint? Where northern Iowa actually starts? Is it?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
That's confusing. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Right, and we actually are in a Grand Valley, though, so we're in the valley of the Grand River, so that's somewhat less confusing, I suppose. So hi to everybody. What we're doing here this afternoon is we're talking about specifications grading. Just to let you know, I'm also attempting to manage the Twitter back channel, and we're using the hashtag of #specsgrading. If you'd like to join in, I think that's probably going to be the most efficient way to handle back channel. Although, as we were just discussing, it remains to be seen whether or not I can actually do the multitasking that's required to manage a back channel, but you can put me to the test, I think. Just to answer some questions that have come up as we sort of advertise this Hangout, this is a Hangouts on air, and so if all the technology works, then the video for what you're seeing here will be available on my YouTube channel after the session is over with, and I'm assuming it's going to give me a link that I will then post up. I've never tried this before, so that's what it says will happen in the instructions. So let me go ahead and start, and then just to kind of lay the background here. So specifications grading or specs grading is something of a new idea. how I came to understand or come to know specs grading was, first of all, I'm an associate professor here at Grand Valley. I've been teaching for about 20 years. Never done anything but traditional points-based, test homework-based grading. And this semester has just been one where it's been good, but it's been very dissatisfying the way that my grading has worked out. And so I've been moving towards something like standards-based grading for quite a while. Never had quite found the right fit for what I want to do. And so when I'm also subscribed to an email listserv called the POD Network, a professional organizational development network, and someone mentioned a new book, which happens to be this book, by Linda Nilson, Specifications Grading. The subtitle is Restoring Rigor, Motivating Students, and Saving Faculty Time. And Linda and I go way back. She was my boss at Vanderbilt University when I was a graduate student there, and I was working as a fellow in the Center for Teaching. And everything she writes is wonderful. And so, wow, if Linda has a new book out, I'm going to go check it out. And I found excuse me, I found a link to an article, an online article that highlighted one of her recent workshops about specifications grading, which I'll describe in a minute, and it really captured my attention.
Robert,
yeah.
I want to pause you. Is your camera off?
No.
Because I don't think everybody else can see you.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that might actually be good, because I don't like seeing myself either. We haven't any...
All right. I heard from one of our viewers that he could not see you, but I can. I don't know. Okay.
Okay, well, if you can hear me, that's really all that matters. I guess you don't really need to see me. But I will say I'm holding up stuff to the camera, I guess, so that makes a difference. So I was very impressed with what Linda had to say about specifications grading. I wanted to interview her at my blog, and that was even more interesting. And so now hey, there you go, because TJ has a copy of the book too. We'll get this done one way or the other. All right. Okay, so you can see, let me see if I've got, apparently Vincent isn't the only person who has some video issues here. Let me see if I've got a button clicked that should not be clicked. While I do that, so I've mentioned a little bit about myself and about where I'm coming from with about specifications grading. TJ, could you talk a little bit about how you got to this point?
Yeah, clearly. So I haven't been teaching quite as long as Robert, but for a while now I've been pretty dissatisfied with the traditional grading setup. And a couple of years ago, in talking with some high school teachers in the area, I learned about the idea of standards-based grading, or standards-based assessment. And so I've been experimenting with that in various forms in the last 2 years, and most heavily right now in a linear algebra class. And I've definitely reached the point where now the reassessments are consuming my life, where I spend 4 or 5 hours a day on it, working with students on reassessment. And so I need a better version of something, and this sounded like it had a similar idea behind it to the standards-based grading, and maybe I'm hopeful that it will work on our compressed time scale. And so that's why I'm reading it and why I'm hoping to get something out of it.
Okay. Right. So, not to interrupt here, but I'm tweaking some of the video settings here. Everybody, I don't know if people can see me now or not.
Okay.
How's it looking? Okay. I guess I have to moderate back and forth between TJ and myself, and maybe that's probably all right here.
Oh, wait. Apparently you fixed it. Vince says he can see us both.
Okay, can everybody see both of us now? Okay. Well, okay, we'll just continue to talk, and that's another thing I'll have to multitask with. Okay, so what is specifications grading, first of all? First of all, I should mention that so TJ is coming from a standards-based grading perspective. I'm coming from a traditional grading perspective, but would like to do standards-based grading of some sort. And so we're kind of seeking out some middle ground here, I think. Let me say a few things about just what specifications grading is. TJ and I have both read Linda's book. We have never used the ideas that are in Linda's book, so we're both complete novices about this. And we're not experts in this. We're here today. Basically, TJ and I set this up so he and I could talk with each other and kick ideas around and sharpen each other on this. But certainly, we're not experts. We've never tried this before. And so let me give it a shot just to explain what specifications grading is, kind of in my own words. And TJ, you can jump in and give your thoughts on this as well. If you think I've got something wrong here too, that's fine. So as we all know, in traditional grading, students go through your course and they complete various kinds of assignments throughout the semester. They're timed assignments and homework assignments, maybe lab or group projects. The idea is that every student does everything, okay? And as students do these assignments, they're points that are based, presumably at least, they're based on specifying outcomes. Maybe there's a rubric that you make up to help assign the points to these things. And then some students get more points and some students get less points. And at the end of the semester, the grades are given based on the point accumulations or statistical transformations of point accumulations. Now, there's a lot of that's the traditional grading system. In specifications grading, it works a little bit like this. And this is how I've been describing it to my own students and other people as we've tried to talk about this. In specs grading, specifications grading, or specs grading, and remember the hashtag is specs grading if you'd like to follow along on Twitter. You still organize your course around learning objectives. That doesn't really change from traditional grading. However, the way assessment is done is to create groups of assignments, each of which are mapped to learning outcomes. Those assignments can be individual, but they're often in the specs grading book. It talks about bundling assignments in bundles or modules. So the course has a number of learning outcomes that are listed out, and a bunch of modules or bundles that consist of assignments that go together that students are supposed to do to demonstrate, like little portfolios, their attainment of those learning outcomes. Each of those bundles, each of the assignments within the bundles, has these really highly specified specifications, which is where the name comes from, for what constitutes acceptable work. These could be really anything. It depends on what the assignment is. For example, if you're having students do a literature review, for example, then you'd want to lay out in great detail exactly what a good literature review, an acceptable literature review looks like, and probably post several examples of good, acceptable literature reviews and unacceptable literature reviews. If you're having students turn in computer programs, then you want to say what constitutes an acceptable computer program and what doesn't constitute an acceptable computer program. The idea is students are working assignments that have highly detailed, specific specifications for what constitutes acceptable work. And the thing that makes this quite different is that specifications grading, all these assignments are graded pass, fail. Either the students work on an assignment meets the specifications, or it doesn't. Now, Linda, in her book, talks about sort of a hybrid system where some assignments in a course are graded on specifications and some are done traditionally, and she goes to some length in one of the chapters about why that's not necessarily a good idea. And I should also say that in her book she lays out a pretty nice literature review about student motivations and intrinsic and extrinsic learning and things like that to be in favor of a pass-fail system for work. So students are working on these bundles done on a pass-fail basis, and the student's grade isn't dependent upon point accumulation, but rather if you target the grade that you want in the course, and then in the syllabus the professor says if you want to get a C, then you need to do the following bundles. If you want to get a B, then you have to do all the stuff for a C and then a few more bundles. If you want to get an A, you have to do all the things for a B and then a few more bundles on top of that. And so that's what specifications grading is. It doesn't necessarily have to involve points at all, although I think that you could make a case for that. What really makes it what it is, it seems, is that you have students basically opting into the grade and the workload that they want to take on, and then students, having opted into that grade, will do the work that's required for that grade. And the professor is there to encourage people not to settle for less, of course, but if a student wants to only top out at a B in the class, then that we respect their wishes and tell them these are the bundles that you have to complete with acceptable passing marks in order to get a B, and there's no partial credit on anything necessarily. TJ, did I do an okay job on that?
I think that's okay.
Okay. What would you add or subtract to that?
Let's see. I think so. The thing I like best, and that I'd really like to emphasize, is the individual assignments need to be graded pass-fail. And you set your level of passing at a spot you're comfortable with.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect necessarily, or maybe it is, depending on the assignment. But that is supposed to save you time and effort and push away a lot of the negative behaviors for both faculty and students that can come from the more traditional point accumulation structure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to help place the focus back on, can you do an acceptable level of work on the things I think are important?
Yeah. Yeah,
what else happens? I think that's the big one.
Yeah, I agree. That's really important. This idea of specs grading really, to play on what you just said, TJ, really came home to me this semester in a couple of places. And I have students watching, so I'm not going to point anybody out, obviously. But at least in a couple of cases in all my classes, there were assignments that were turned in where really, honestly, the work wasn't acceptable. It really just wasn't very good. It didn't, I mean, we wrote out specifications, but we really have a rubric for how to assign points to things. But I just got a little, I began to feel like I was lying to my students when I say that I'm going to give you 6 out of 10 points for work that really isn't masterful at all. I mean, I have my students working on assignments that are key to learning outcomes and learning objectives, a very finely detailed system of learning objectives, possibly too finely detailed in some ways. But it just dawned on me that, you know, a student can get a C in one of my courses without really mastering anything, not even the simplest material. And so when I look at students' grades and someone has a B- in calculus, for example, what does that exactly mean? And it just doesn't, I can't really say with confidence that it means anything other than the student has figured out how to accumulate enough points to get a B-. And what I would like to see is, you know, a B- means that a student has given incontrovertible objective evidence that, to my professional standards, you know, as the professor, they have mastered, you know, at least a certain body of material that they have elected to show mastery upon.
So here's an important spot, actually. When I started giving talks about my efforts to do standards-based assessment, the first question I would ask people who were skeptical is, what does a C in Calc 1 mean?
Yeah.
Right? And so, as you're pointing out, you want to now assign it in such a way, if you actually tie your assignments and your assessments to your learning objectives, you can say what a C in Calc 1 means. I know the student can do this, and they can do that, and they haven't shown me they can do this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not only helpful and comforting from an instructor's point of view, but, you know, I think the high school crowd is already dealing with a top-down assessment culture coming at them, and it's going to come to us too soon.
Yeah.
So this would be a good way to prepare for it. If your next accreditation board asks you, how do you know that when students pass Calc 1 they actually can take a derivative? Well, you could say, well, they all got 60% on the final exam. No, you can say
60% their way through every single topic in the course.
You can say instead, no,
right,
exactly.
They're really good enough. I mean, I don't, you know.
Yeah. So you can actually tie directly to department learning outcomes, particular assignments, and grade outcomes, and that's a wonderful thing, I think, in the long run.
Yeah. Vince Knight, who's asked, does this mean no one can fail a class? And absolutely people can fail a class on this. If you set up specifications for a D, like standards for a D, like say you have designed a course with specifications grading, and in order to get a D, you have to complete, and you've made it so that there's like 12 bundles in the class, and this is really oversimplified, but if you have 12 bundles in the class, and to get an A, you have to complete all 12 of the passing mark. To get a B, you have to complete 9 of them. The C, you have to complete half of them. The D, you have to complete 4 of them. And if a student doesn't complete 4 of them, they fail. There's some other examples in Linda's book. One of them that really stuck out to me, I don't know if you have in mind, TJ, but one of them that really stuck out to me was a course on research methods, I believe it was, in education, I want to say. And one of this core project of the course was to create an actual IRB application to do a research project in education, or maybe it was in psychology, or anyway, it was one of these human subjects type of things. And the students had to, in order to get at least a D in the course, students had to submit a proposal to the IRB by the deadline. And so if a student does everything else in the course and yet misses that one deadline, they flunk the course. And so the professor of that course had to say, do I have the guts to fail a person who has, got passing marks and everything else but didn't meet that deadline? And ultimately, the person said yes, because I'll fail that person because that's a professional standard. You got to meet deadlines. So there are actually quite a few ways to fail a course, whereas in a traditional grading course, it feels like you really have to sort of work at it to fail sometimes.
Yeah. So one feature that is definitely different from the standards-based stuff that I've talked to other people about is that at least in my stupid implementation of standards-based assessment in linear algebra this term, there's basically, to make things low stake, there's basically an infinite number of retries on any one particular assessment. I mean, that's false because you can't literally do it that many times, but 3 or 4 attempts would not be a surprise. And that feels like a lot when you add up all of your students and you pile it in the last couple of weeks of class. Mm. And so I don't know exactly how I feel about the suggestion that Nilson has in this book about giving out tokens for reassessment, basically, right? You try this assignment once, and either it meets standards or doesn't, and if you'd like to redo it, you actually have to turn in one of your free passes. That's a feature I'd like. So, Robert, what do you have to say about that? I want to hear about what that means to you and how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because I should back this up and say, for my calculus students, teaching 2 sections of Calc 1 right now, traditional grading, obviously, they just took their last test of the semester, and this is just this past week, and so I gave them as a 4-point problem on that test to go read one of the articles that I mentioned a little earlier that goes into some detail about specs grading, and to submit a 200-word response. And I've got all those responses in, and they're really, really fascinating. And to a person, almost every student said, we would not want to do pass-fail without some sort of a safety net. And I'm good with that. If you give students, say, 5 tokens at the beginning of the semester, just 5 things, little fake currency, if you want to. There's 5 times where you can hand in a token and either get a 24-hour extension on a deadline or a redo, a do-over on a module. Then it takes some of the bite out of pass-fail. I will say too that a large portion of my calc students who were investigating specs grading were getting really confused because they thought that pass-fail means that if you make any mistakes at all, you fail. And so they were saying, oh, the specs grading thing is a terrible idea, because what if I'm doing a calculus problem and I make a silly mistake? Then I'm going to fail. And that's not really necessarily the case. And you can set a bundle up to be, say you're going to make a bundle about basic derivative computations, a product rule, chain rule, quotient rule, power rule, and you're going to, in that bundle, there's going to be 12 derivative computations the students have to do. And you can make it so that passing means perfection if you wanted to. You could set the bar as high as you want to, so passing means no mistakes whatsoever, not even notational errors. Or you can set the bar to say, passing means you complete everything, and the only mistakes you make are arithmetic errors. So basically, you get all the calculus right, and you're allowed some screw-ups and everything else. Students were not really getting the idea that there's no partial credit doesn't mean that if you make a mistake, you fail. Okay. Still, though, it's good to have a safety net. And I like the idea of revision. I think you do too, TJ, and that's one of the things that's attractive about standards-based grading is that, getting to do something again once you've made a mistake is a really powerful learning experience. Now, you don't have to, as you said you're being consumed, was it?
Yeah, that's the word I used.
Could you say a little bit more about exactly how that's going? I mean, what exactly is consuming about it?
Well, so in my linear algebra class, I have 14 content standards for the semester, thanks to my standards-based assessment friends, like, hi Kate, how's it going, for helping me to figure that out, that was a reasonable number. and 10 of them I deemed foundational, and 4 of them were sort of more advanced. And I told the students at the beginning of the semester that to get a letter grade out of the 4 that they want to earn, right, that one of them was they'd have to get 9 out of 10 foundational things to earn, say, if you already have a C, that would earn you a B. And then if you wanted to get an A, you needed 2 out of the 4 advanced ones. So that's a lot of stuff to do. And if a student takes 3 attempts on each one of those things to finally get it, and each one takes them about a half hour to do, and I have to design all of those assessments, it's taking a lot of my time. So the last couple of weeks I've spent way more time on this than I ever thought possible, and I need a better system. And so one way, of course, is to no, you can only reassess twice, or set some cap. There's this tokens idea that Nilson has described, and I don't know, I might use that too. Anyway, that's the reason that I'm having trouble with it, is that I was far too lenient in trying to make sure I was teaching rather than grading.
So I like the idea of students getting opportunities to rethink and redo work, but I don't like the idea of students getting unlimited opportunities to rethink and redo work. Not because it's bad for them, because it's just impossible to handle from a practical standpoint. And at some point, one of the things I like about the specs grading pass-fail idea is at some point a student has to just come to grips with, you're responsible for knowing whether or not your work passes the specifications, right? You've got to be responsible for double-checking everything you turn in. You can't just spew something out, throw it at the professor and hope for the best, right? This is much more like the way that the working world actually operates, where you do your work, you double-check it, you triple-check it, you do the best you can, and then you hand it in, and it's either acceptable or it isn't. And I like the idea of students both debugging their work if it's incorrect on a limited basis, but also sort of pre-bugging, is that a word? Pre-debugging, to say, look, just make a checklist and sit down with your work and make sure that it passes the specifications before you turn it in. Okay, this is just part of being an adult to me, and that's what I like. So there's 2 ends to that. I mean, the pass-fail grading kind of puts it on the student to quality control check in a way that doesn't happen now. That's for sure. And then the token system on the back end can pick up any errors in quality control checking. That's kind of how I see it. I'm checking I'm actually multitasking here because there's a chat window open, I have Twitter going, and there's also stuff happening on the Hangout webpage here. Dana Ernst is joining us too. Hi, Dana. Dana was asking, if a student decides to shoot for a B, will they just skip the bundles that aren't needed for a B? I think maybe he meant needed for an A. I want the best of both worlds. I want them to master some bundles and make some effort on all bundles. This is a question that actually a lot of my students brought up too, and I was surprised in a sort of a pleasant way that students brought it up. A lot of students, particularly my students who are the high-achieving A-level students, did not like the idea of specs grading because not everybody was pushed to, as some of them said, achieve their full potential. To that I would say, and TJ, you can follow up on this. To that I would say, this is just part of working with adults, right? I mean, we're teaching adults, not children. And if a student comes into a class and says, I'm shooting for a B is what I need. A B is what is realistic for me. It's what fits into my schedule. I don't necessarily want to have an A. I don't need an A. Then I will try my best to encourage them to shoot as high as they possibly can. If I really feel like the student is capable of getting an A in the class, I'll definitely encourage them. But at the end of the day, if they would like not to go for an A, I will respect their wishes, because this is how adults deal with each other. They have their reasons. For some people, a B in calculus is a mighty high bar for them to reach for, possibly unrealistically high for some people. And I teach a lot of computer science majors, and I have a lot of them come in and say, I don't really need an A in this class, and I have a business that I run, and I don't really have time to commit to it to get an A, so I'm shooting for a B, no disrespect. I like the material, but I'm not going for extreme high grades here.
Yeah.
And I'll encourage you to do better, but at the end of the day, I'm the consultant, you're the client, right? And so your choice is your choice.
I feel largely the same way. and I can say this term I actually had a student who write about Halloween double-checked with me. He said, given what I've done so far on the grading scale, I have a D no matter what happens for the rest of the class, correct? And that was correct. So I said yes, and I have not seen him since.
Right, right. So a student could conceivably, if the student wants to get a C in the course, and that getting a C consists of completing 8 out of 12 bundles, and they complete those 8 out of 12 bundles, in September 15th, then okay, I'll see you. Have a nice life. Maybe there's a final exam, maybe there isn't.
Yeah,
but
and I largely respect that. The small worry is that there will be some people who don't understand, and especially for younger students or students who are somehow underrepresented in mathematics. I think that there is a problem that we have to be careful about not allowing someone to sell themselves short, and so it becomes the instructor's responsibility to do a lot of pushing students in as friendly a way as possible to do the best they can, because they may not believe it, that they can do better, right? And it would be our job to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Linda pointed that out too in the interview at my blog. I asked her, one of the questions I asked was exactly Dana's question. Do you worry that students are just going to opt into the least amount of work possible, basically? And she said, well, maybe, but what I really worry about are people from underrepresented groups or first-generation college students who really don't believe in their own abilities. So they don't really think they can get an A in a course at all, any course. And so at that point, I don't think this is really any different than traditional grading, though. I mean, in traditional grading, students put forth the effort for the grade that they want, right? It's just based on point accumulation, and so it becomes less about what they learn. Like, I want to learn enough to get a B. It becomes, I want to earn enough points to get a B. And so forget learning. I just want to earn enough points. And if I can, talk you out of points or cheat and get points, then that's good enough for me. Yeah. So. It's the students that traditionally will need the extra encouragement that are maybe the most sensitive in this situation. But for me, that's on me. That's where I got to step in and intervene.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a nice thing too, because part of the thing I like about being an instructor is I actually get to deal with students. Like, I enjoy talking to my students, and so that becomes a thing that I can do naturally. I don't know if it comes as naturally to everybody to play cheerleader, but for me it does, so that works. If you aren't naturally a cheerleader for your students, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you just aren't, right? Then you have to find a way to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. So TJ, are you thinking about using specs grading in an upcoming class? And if so, what are some? Have you thought about some specifics yet?
Yes. So, a class that needs better specs for me, for many years now, I've taught a Moore method Euclidean geometry class.
Cool. And
grading such a course is both really easy and really hard. Really easy because I watch class for an entire semester, and by week 15, I know what grades my students deserve. It's not a question, and I've never had a problem with it. But I will eventually someday have a student who complains, and I'd like to do better. What's really hard is, like, there's not a way to build up a lot of evidence for my student can do this tiny little thing or that tiny little thing. I don't give exams, right? What they do is they present at the board every day. That's what we do. And so I started building a specs grading system for that class because it's the class I understand the best. And it looks kind of like this. So I have a set of sort of learning outcomes that I've been using for years for that class, and then I went back and thought about what kinds of things do I really do that are assessments in that class, even if I haven't made them, really public. The kinds of things that the students tend to do are, where'd my list go? I'm failing at this point. They give presentations. They write papers on their presentations for a class journal. They play referee for the class journal. And then we have a big comprehensive final exam. And I can easily take pieces of those and say, so here, for a D, this is my little system that I started writing down. For a D, give at least 2 presentations in class that are accepted as theorems at some point in the term. Get a paper accepted and published in the class journal. solve 1 out of the 4 problems on the final exam, and do. Oh, that's right. We do like reflective self-assessment interviews 3 times a semester, and so complete those. Right? And for a C, I can bump up the number of presentations and the number of published papers and number of problems solved on the final, and then also at C level and above, I'm going to require them to. I'll call it submitting a portfolio, but I think of it kind of like a tenure document, right? Because that's really what they're doing. They're apprenticing to be professional mathematicians, so it's a tenure document. And then, all the way up to the A, the distinction between B and A I find much more difficult. I think I'm going to save that for myself to decide whether or not someone's earned an A by doing deeper quality work. And I'm not sure what to do with that part yet.
Yeah.
But otherwise, that's the kind of thing I have in mind.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a cool idea. I really like how you tie that into professional practice. Really, is what that's really all about. As I was reading Linda's book, it struck me that, first of all, in her book, it's kind of hard for mathematicians to read her book because there are no mathematicians in her book.
No, and the one chance she brings mathematics up, there's a paragraph, I circled it. She started talking about how in math there's this other thing, and then she said, but I don't really know how to do that. I actually circled it and wrote in the margin, punt. She totally gave up on us.
I'll have to give her a hard time about that.
Yeah.
Do you know where it is? I got my book.
I'm gonna find it and I'll.
Okay. I was just going to say while you're looking that up, there are a lot of examples in Linda's book, and I think it's well worth the read. I did notice that a lot of the examples that she gave, in fact, almost all of the ones that she gave, were not from the STEM disciplines, and there were not very many that contain what you might call procedural knowledge. Like, I was thinking calculus the whole way as I was reading this because that's a large portion of my workload. But in calculus, there's a lot of just procedures you have to master. Whereas in something like, maybe management information systems was a recurring example. This one MIS course kept coming up and up and up. And even that wasn't really a lot of procedures. And you would think a lot of programming and database type stuff was in there, but a lot of these were coming from humanities, social sciences, where it's mostly conceptual knowledge and writing. And writing-oriented classes, it seems to me, would be extremely well suited for a specs grading setup. And so, anyway, getting back around to my original point, it struck me that what specs grading is really doing with the whole pass-fail thing is kind of modeling how professional mathematicians submit their own work. I mean, we write up things for journals, we submit them to journals, and either in the end of the day, it either is published or it isn't. I mean, if you're having good results, then you might get a sort of a major revision type of message back from the publisher. But still, I mean, you have to make sure that your work is up to specs. And so I like the fact that specs grading seems to model professional practice in that kind of way. So, yeah, good on you.
Yeah, so I found the thing. It was on page 33.
30? Okay.
Yeah, so there's actually a section titled...
Oh, yeah, it's this big... Okay.
Yeah. So, it talks about how problems at the back of a section... Yeah.
Okay.
It talks about how problems at the back of a section of a standard mathematics textbook increase in difficulty from the early numbered problems to the late numbered problems.
Oh.
And is talking about how there's something more challenging going on. And then right as you would expect some sort of discussion about how you can break these into different ideas and structure a specs grading thing, she just says, for whatever reasons, fewer students are able to solve more complex problems.
Yeah, well,
those would take a long time. So solving them relatively quickly means that you must be better, and that's the end of the section.
Okay, well.
Yeah. So anyway.
Obviously, a little more work to do there.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
She's not a mathematician.
Yeah. I thought that. So I wanted to share something that I was drafting out as well, and I don't know if Kent is still there. Kent, I see your bicycle, but I don't see Kent. Kent Sinclair, okay, how are you doing, Kent? He's a student, and Josiah Campbell, I think, might be looking into. They were both students in my, there's a 2-semester course that I teach called Discrete Structures for Computer Science. It's a 2-semester sequence. It's taught out of the math department. It really serves the computer science department here. And it's 95 to 99% computer science majors all the time. the course is kind of all over the place, and these guys know that it's not really, nobody really kind of understands around here what should be taught, what should not be taught, or how it should be taught. So I was giving this a crack, and Kent was emailing me about this and asking about all this, and so I sat down and just drafted up what a Math 225 course would have looked like had we done it with specs grading. Now next semester I'm teaching the second semester of this course, and so if I can kind of get the familiar stuff roughed out, then we can maybe go with what we have here. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and I used to know how to do that. Sharing my screen share. The button says screen share. That's a great idea. Let's see, I think I can just grab this and share it. Okay, everyone said, there we go. Okay, so here's a little document that I wrote up. I have this is the markdown source for this available on GitHub, and I can send it out to whoever wants it. So 225 is ordered around, it's not a Moore method class like TJ's geometry course. It's a fairly straightforward, traditional-oriented class. I have not done it with standards-based grading. It's all been, excuse me, traditional every time I've taught it. So there are 5 big ideas in the course: logic and proof, sets, functions and algorithms, recursion and induction, excuse me, and basics of counting. The second semester of the course deals with graphs, relations, and trees, and so that's kind of the computer sciencey part of it. So the way I was envisioning a redo of this course is to take those 5 big ideas here and turn them into groups of bundles. I don't know, this is my category theory abstract algebra side coming out, where I have groups of bundles of modules or something like that. So you have these core modules that are logic and proof, sets, functions, algorithms, recursion, induction, and counting. Excuse me. And within each of those groups, you'd have 3 levels. You have LP1, LP2, and LP3, S1, S2, S3, and so on. The counting unit at the end is really short, so it only goes to 2. And so the letters designate the content, and the numbers designate sort of the degree of difficulty. So each of those modules has 3 levels except for this one, so that's 14 modules total. They consist of exercises of various sorts that get at the basic learning objectives for the content, but they get harder and harder as they go up. And as they go up, like the 2-level and 3-level modules would have both programming assignments and proof assignments in them. This is a class that's a little, proof is an important part of the course because our computer science department is ABET accredited, and ABET and the Association for Computing Machinery sort of dictate that students should complete this course knowing how to write some basic proofs. Okay. It's very hard to teach proof at this level. The only prerequisite for this course is basically college algebra, and so students are coming out of a very basic algebra background, and we expect them to do proofs like we expect math majors to do proofs, and it doesn't really work so well. So the idea is to have everybody do a little bit of proof on some level, but only the students who pass the course with a high grade will be constructing proofs. I'll say more about that in a second. Pardon me, getting a little bit dry in the throat. So you have those 14 core modules, and then there are 3 additional ones. One for Python. I teach Python as part of the course, just sort of a just enough to be dangerous basis. And then PR1 and PR2, where students are actually constructing their own original mathematical proofs of things. And those ABET ACM guidelines, it doesn't actually say students should be able to write original proofs. It just says students should have a knowledge of proof. And so I interpret that as meaning like a C-level student should be able to read a proof that has been written, discern the outline of an argument in a proof, and maybe set up a proof, like an induction proof. As every student should be able to identify the predicate that's involved, the base case, the inductive hypothesis, and the inductive step. Students who want to get higher than a C need to do more than that, but everybody has to do that much at least. Okay, so you have 17 modules total. To get an F in the course, going back to Vincent's question, you just failed to meet the requirements for a D. Okay, that's easy enough. This is a flip class, so students are doing preparatory work outside of class through guided practice. Those guided practices. That's my original pass-fail assignment I've been doing forever, pass-fail. You either get 2 points on it or you get 0 points, depending on whether you gave a good faith effort and completed everything. So to get a D in the course, you got to complete at least 75% of the guided practice and complete all the basic content modules. That's a D. To get a C, you do all of that, plus complete the Python module, complete any 2 of the medium level modules, and get a 70% on quizzes. And I'm kind of going back and forth with quizzes. These would be like once every like 5 days on basic stuff like definitions. To get a B in the course, you got to do all the above, plus complete one of the proofwriting modules, complete 3 of the level 2 modules, and 1 of the advanced modules, and have a higher average on quizzes. To get an A in the course, you got to do all that, plus complete the second proofwriting module, complete all of the level 2 modules, and any 3 of the 4 advanced modules. Okay, so everybody's doing the basic work if they're even going to get a D in the course. If you want to get higher than that, you have to just complete not only more work but harder work. Okay, and then get 5 tokens at the beginning of the semester. You can cash any one of them in to get a redo on a module or get a 24-hour extension on the deadline. And I kind of envision there would be no time testing other than these short 15 to 20-minute quizzes that take place at intervals throughout the semester. Final exam period would be spent having students come in and redoing their lowest 3 quizzes so they can try to up their quiz grade. I don't know if that's exactly perfect or what kind of flaws it may have. TJ, what do you think about all that?
I like it actually quite a lot, and I used it when I had to redesign things earlier this week for my linear algebra class. I did something similar.
Okay.
I was inspired. It helped me deal with my issues this term.
I really liked, I kind of like the way this worked out. I'm not totally sure about this. TJ, I failed to take your advice about the plus-minus grades.
No, actually, I ended up taking yours. So, like I said earlier, I set out these really high standards for the students to meet to earn an improvement in their grade, and instead of getting a system that was low stakes and therefore not too intimidating and would reduce stress in the classroom, by last week it was clear that it had only ramped up stress again. Like it had just pushed it back in time and compressed it.
Yeah.
So in fact, I ended up setting up a system where, most of my students have passed their SAGE assessment by now. Like they've demonstrated they could use a computer algebra system to some basic degree, and they've done the basic coursework they need to by now. So if you pass 4 out of the 10 assessments, that's a C+. If you do 5, that's a B-. If you do 6 and one of the advanced ones, that's a B. And I just did that and stepped it all the way up until an A was meet all of the requirements that I had from the beginning of the term.
Yeah.
And it fit much better, and people are like breathing sighs of relief because they can aim for something they think they like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is good. I mean, at first I thought all of the examples in Linda's book are straight A, B, C, D, F grading scales. There's no mention that I caught of plus-minus grades in the whole thing. Now we've got plus-minus grades here at Grand Valley, and so I asked my department chair, could I just choose not to give plus-minus grades if I didn't want to? And he checked with the associate dean. The associate dean said, yeah, you got to have some way of earning plus-minus grades in your grading system. So, I probably easier to ask for forgiveness and permission, but I thought this time that maybe I want to be careful about that. But I think I'm agreeing with you.
I think so, yes.
I kind of see all you have to do is just add more modules into the system, and you can easily get plus-minus grades. And I think this is a good way to kind of get students who are slightly more motivated to go just a little bit higher, because if they're completing all the modules that they need to get for a B, you could say, hey, look, all you got to do is just do 1 more module and you'll have a B+, or 2 more modules. You're so there. Why don't you just go ahead and do it? And so if you make it a little more incremental, a student can do 2 more modules, and you say, hey, you're just 2 more modules away from an A-. Why don't you go ahead and do those too? I kind of see the plus-minus system as an opportunity to encourage students to do just a little bit more to get a little bit better grade.
Yeah.
So we're at 3:50 p.m. I know some people may have to dash here. So let me end off this by talking about my plans for this. I'm making a commitment to trying this out next semester, both in this second semester of discrete structures class, and I'm teaching a second semester abstract algebra class as well. I'm kind of lucky in that sense because I've got three upper level classes that I'm teaching next semester, and so that's a great place to experiment. But we're also at Grand Valley piloting a fully online calculus course, and I agreed to do this online calculus course. And I think this is a perfect fit for an online class because with no synchronous meeting times or any such thing like that, just setting out modules and letting students work at them, and me being having the job of explainer rather than point keeper, I think is going to be a nice fit. I don't know how it's actually going to work out or the details yet, but I'm making a commitment to get away from traditional grading, just because I don't think it's doing right by students. So, TJ, what about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to use this to tighten up the way I communicate with my students in my Euclidean geometry class. And then I think the other place I can use it next term is I'm teaching a differential geometry class, which is an upper level elective, but one that has some features of like taking a linear algebra class where you have to learn to do like different kinds of computations. But so I can use this as a way to organize, like, this is sort of the lower level work that I need you to be able to do, and that'll all be bundled into a C. And if you can demonstrate that you've learned to think a little bit more about the ideas, that'll be a B, and I'm going to try something.
Sure, great. Well, just to end this off, again, the book that we recommend is Specifications Grading by Linda Nilson. It's very short. It's only about 150 pages long. I mean, I read it it's a really good read. There's a lot of really good stuff in there to keep your attention. Other things that you might see over on my blog at Casting Out Nines, I'll be probably talking a lot more about this as the next semester kind of comes in. Also, we'll share some of the results of my students' writing exercises about this. There's some really fascinating opinions that are coming out of students that you wouldn't expect to hear necessarily from students. And they're quite insightful stuff and some interesting issues and potential, road bumps that I personally wouldn't have ever thought that students would have, but they're there. So my students are helping me catch some pitfalls before they actually become huge issues. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. The link for this, I'm hoping, if this whole technology thing works out, it'll be a YouTube link to my YouTube channel. I don't know what that link is yet, but I'll post it when I get it. If you want to talk more, follow myself or follow TJ on Google Plus or on Twitter, and we will do that. TJ, thanks for hanging out with me, man. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. Hi, everybody, and goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. Have a nice afternoon.